You know, we've been talking about 99% versus the 1%. So who are the 1%? Let's find out. In fact, ABC News went and looked at IRS tax data and realized that people making over $380,354 are your top 1%. Okay, so now we know that's a pretty significant number, right? And how much of the nation's wealth do they hold? They hold 35.6% of the nation's entire wealth, just the top 1% do. Okay. Now, look, there are people in that top 1% like Bill Gates, et cetera, Steve Jobs, before he passed away, who earned it, or through skill, talent, LeBron James, Oprah Winfrey, et cetera. That isn't the issue. The issue is bankers who owe the United States government, still to this day, $1.5 trillion. The ones that dumped their toxic mortgages on the Fed to the tune of $1 trillion. The ones that got backdoor bailouts from AIG, and AIG still owes the taxpayers $53 billion. Those guys took our money. That's the issue, okay? Now, when you go to one of those traders, Eric Wilkinson, he doesn't understand what this is all about. He says, it's Capitol Hill and Obama that are the culprits. They're the ones not doing their jobs. Don't protest us. No, protest the guys who we are against, even though they funnel the money just the same to us anyway. Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter. Under Bush and Obama, they all got rich by taking our taxpayer dollars. Okay, so where does he want you to direct your anger instead? Well, he says, look, somebody rich should not be penalized for making headway in this society. They should pay their fair share of taxes, but they shouldn't be taxed more. They deserve their money. Wait a minute, they shouldn't be taxed more. Yeah, I agree they should pay their fair share of taxes. What part of 15% is fair? So if you earn your money through regular income, you have a salary, whether it's LeBron James or Oprah Winfrey or whoever it might be, they get taxed at 35% if it's their salary, right? But a lot of these traders and these guys that are working on Wall Street, they get taxed only 15% because they do it either through capital gains or dividends or carried interest, which is outrageous. So yeah, pay your fair share of taxes. That's what we want. But he thinks he earned every nickel of it. It doesn't matter that the government gave you $1.5 trillion that you still haven't paid back. It doesn't matter that you pay much less taxes than the average American. He thinks, oh, I got it, so I earned it. How dare you? But it gets worse. A guy overhears elevator conversation at Goldman Sachs, and he goes on Twitter and tweets out what he heard. And these are quotes that he's saying he heard by Goldman Sachs employees in their building, okay? Get a load of the first one. What are they complaining about? People seem a hell of a lot happier in the TGI Fridays commercials than they ever do at Gramercy Tavern. Oh, that makes me want to vomit. Gramercy Tavern is one of those fancy restaurants in New York where you pay a ton of money. They're like, we go to Gramercy Tavern and some of the people there are bummed out that they're not as rich as the other folks there. And the TGIF commercials, they all seem happy. Oh, can you imagine going to TGIFs with the rabble? Why don't they take the little bread that or crumbs that we've given them and run off to TGI Fridays? Here's another one. Apparently somebody said, quote, a protester sees my Benz and wants to rip me out of it. A real man sees my car and wants to work hard so he can buy it one day. Yeah, real man. What a real man goes and buys the Treasury Secretary under Bush and the Treasury Secretary under Obama, pays him a nickel and a dime, or in the case of Goldman Sachs with Hank Paulson, he ran the company and got over $500 million directing taxpayer money to Goldman Sachs. So what a real man does apparently is goes and buys our democracy, corrupts our system, makes a tremendous amount of money off of it, gets a $13 billion backdoor bailout specifically at Goldman Sachs through AIG, pockets $13 billion of taxpayer money, and then says, oh, they want to rip me out of my Benz. Those rabble at TGIFs, why don't they get their own Benz? I want to say much harsher things, but I'm going to leave it right there. By the way, they did a poll of Wall Street workers. You know how if you ask average Americans, do you think your pay is going to rise in the next year? Said 90% of them say no. When you ask bankers on Wall Street, well, the poll says 62% of them expect their bonuses to be as good or better than last year. And they're like, whoa, that's down from 71% last year. Last year, 71% expected bigger bonuses, even though we were only basically a year removed from a complete catastrophe in the economy that they caused. Let me remind you now that AIG, after they blew up the whole economic system, they demanded $450 million in bonuses that year. The year that we rescued them and put in $172 billion to AIG, they plan to pay out $450 million in bonuses to the jackasses who ruined our economy. The sense of entitlement is through the roof, and it's unbearable. And then they say, oh, what is the problem?